Hello everyone, welcome back to the SMITE Comprehensive Guide to Hades. I finally got an acceptable match to show you. A lot of people have been disconnecting. Now, this is, again, Hades in the solo lane very specifically, so I'm playing solo. Beyond that, this is not exactly a standard composition. For reference, the Osiris is our jungler and Aposh is our support. Now, this doesn't really affect me as a solo laner for most of this, but it does. You can actually see me later on be caught by surprise for this because I forgot about this fact about halfway through the match. But I want to talk, obviously, first off about what I'm looking at as a solo lane Hades. Now, the first thing I notice is that they don't have a warrior, which means a non-warrior is going to be in the solo lane. The question for me now is, which one? Right, who's being in the solo lane? Now, my personal guess is either Maui or Anubis. Right, I'm leaning much more heavily towards Maui. He's been somewhat popular in the solo lane. He does great with either the Gilded Arrow or an Animosity build. So this is my general expectation, but I do have a bit of maybe a possibility of Anubis floating around in the back of my mind, because he also plays very well in the solo lane, and maybe it's a mid lane Ymir. I've seen it before, right? It turns out that it's the Ymir, which is, depending on how Ymir builds, it can be either an okay matchup or a really bad one. It, again, primarily depends on how Ymir builds. I will talk about how Ymir builds as the match progresses. But this is going to, just as sort of a forewarning, this is going to be a really good indication of both things you should and should not do against Hades in the solo lane. Alright, so we're just going to go on ahead and skip right on over to here. This is me trying to figure out who the laning opponent is, and right there I see it's Ymir. Alright, you could see that little club swing. Actually, if you just pay attention for a second here, we're going to go back a little bit here, and I'm trying to figure out who the laning opponent is, and you can see right up here, boom, that is Ymir. Okay, so now I know for a fact that Ymir is my laning opponent. Now, depending on how he built, this is either going to be a challenge for me, but winnable, or I'm going to curb stomp this poor guy, right? Because Ymir doesn't have any way of getting out of Hades' ult, so he has to build appropriately, right? Essentially. Furthermore, Ymir can bring to bear some really heavy damage if he's built correctly, so that is something to also watch out for. Because the interesting thing about the matchup of Hades versus Ymir, and this is what I'm thinking of right at this particular moment, is that Ymir does not have any built-in sustain, okay? So it's really, really important for a solo laner without sustain to deal large quantities of damage, okay? Vitally important. Basically, if you're in the solo lane, you have two options. Sustain your way to victory, or absolute pub stomp your way to victory. There is no real other options, okay? You're either really heavy on the damage, or you've got enough sustain to make it through and farm to your heart's content, right? So, I know it's going to be Ymir. Here he is. I'm looking to, start putting down some blights on the minion wave. Now, the Ymir does the correct thing here. He totally ignores me. Okay, that's pretty big. You do not want to get into a fight with Hades. Now, he does make a mistake, and I know he made a mistake here. He's standing in front, right? I actually checked. I get the hits on those, and you'll notice I only hit the front line. Alright, I hit the front line very specifically because I did want to poke him. And second off, again, Hades likes there to be minions, so I very specifically left the back line relatively untouched, so that way in 7 seconds, if I need healing, I can do so, right? So you can see that the Ymir took a bit of damage there. I'm actually looking at this. You actually see me check back here. This is not me just focusing on the front line just for the sake of focusing on it. I'm looking at his health, because he's taken quite a bit more damage than even I would expect in this scenario. So something's up, right? There's something I don't know. He's built something. Here's Mercury a little bit. Now, the Mercury missed that, which is very unfortunate for them. If he'd hit that, I'd be in much more trouble. Here's obviously Osiris. Osiris goes in. I'm turning around. I'm looking to grab some heals, and boom, some great pokes. Now, again, unfortunately for the Mercury, and this isn't something Mercury could necessarily have predicted, There's still minions. Now, yes, I am still level 1, very true, and I didn't hit level 2 because Osiris was here splitting those stacks with me, but we're still in the middle of a minion wave, right? I'm still not that concerned about my health at this point. I'm just trying to hit level 2 so I have access to my second damaging ability. That's all I'm really looking for here. And boom, I get some nice damage on Ymir there. And Mercury would like to get in, but he can't because it's scary out there. Right, and then I'm going to go in on the Ymir, try to do some damage, but he freezes me out of it. That's fine. I take a lot of damage there. That is also fine. He takes more. I see Osiris boxing in the jungle there, so I'm kind of keeping an eye on this. You can actually see it over here. This is why I position here. I want to look at this very directly. I want to see the health, because seeing people fighting on the minimap doesn't actually tell you what their health is like. So I'm pressing the Ymir very specifically here because I want to force him back. Alright, so that way I can go help Osiris with the Mercury. That is very specifically what I was doing there. But they break it off. I'm not sure why, but they break it off. So they stop fighting. So I'm like, alright, let me go do whatever with Osiris. But Osiris leaves. So now I'm just going to try to keep pressure on Ymir. Now, Ymir losing that fight turns out is because of the item he's built. I'll talk about that when I first check, but right now I should have been checking here, to be honest. This was a good break for me to have checked that, but I did not. I was probably worried about Mercury at the time, to be honest. So he gets some more poke on Ymir there. Right, and now I'm going to clear up the wave. And again, he's taking a bit more damage than I personally would expect here. So now I'm going to go wandering off to go steal his Scorpion. And this is where I check, right? I should have checked this before. Now, he's built this mask. Now, this, on the surface, isn't necessarily a bad item on Ymir, okay? As I mentioned earlier, Ymir does not have any built-in sustain. He needs to hit really hard. Unfortunately for Ymir, this is the worst possible starter item you can build against Hades. Why? Because even though my Blight detonations do only 50% damage to enemy gods, the mask both increases the wielder's damage and increases the damage they take. And that increase, both in provided and received damage, increases as they level up. Okay? This is an extremely high-risk item to build. This is generally why I don't recommend this. On the one hand, yes, you absolutely can curb stomp with this if your matchup is good. But, as is this example here, if you're wrong about who your laning opponent is, you're going to have an extremely bad time. Sort of mild spoiler warnings, Ymir does not have a good time here, okay? And this is primarily due to his mask choice. Alright, now you might be wondering, Professor, what could Ymir have built instead that still would have given him some respectable damage, but not left him so vulnerable? By the way, just to double down on this issue, by the way, the Ymir will wind up building the Warlock staff, so he's going to be trying to be building stacks on top of all of this, which I'll get into that when he starts building these, because the problem with that is more apparent at that time. But, leaving that aside for the moment, when I play Ymir in the solo lane, and I have done it before, I really like, nowadays, I like Gilded Arrow, because Ymir's passive doubles the amount of damage his auto attacks deal on enemies with Frostbite, which means literally any enemy that takes damage from Ymir's abilities. So the wall is the only thing Ymir has that doesn't provide Frostbite, alright? Now, that double damage includes the 20 basic attack damage increase of Gilded Arrow, which is a far more direct increase in Ymir's early game damage than literally anything else he can build, because, again, just to remind you, magic auto attacks only scale with 20% of the person's magic power, and of course you're in the solo lane, so you're not building a whole lot of power in the first place. Alright, you just aren't. You're supposed to be building hybrids so you can rotate and start slapping people around, tanking things, and generally being a pain in the neck, right? That is generally what you want to have happen here. But with Gilded Arrow, Ymir can actually put out really respectable damage numbers, especially when you consider how difficult it is to get away from Ymir with the wall, with the freeze, with the slow. Ymir can lock you down without really trying too hard and land some great auto attacks, and with Gilded Arrow he can really slap. Now, this would have given Ymir a good fighting chance, because even if I was ulting, he could inflict me with Frostbite and still be doing at least some damage to me. bust out an early Bancroft's talent, evolve that, glyph that into the Bancroft's, whatever that is, I can't remember which one it is, the one that increases his attack speed, and while it won't be a huge attack speed boost, it would be some sustain, it would be some attack speed increase, and it would be a decent damage increase, and that really would have been a better option for him than the Mask Warlock Staff combo he winds up going for. Now, why does he go for this? I was told by the enemy team afterwards, I don't generally record the post-game chat because that can get very toxic, and I don't really want that sort of being broadcast. I don't want to reward that. But the enemy team did tell me very calmly that this Ymir is apparently Masters ranked in ranked games, according to the Ymir anyways. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But if that is true, well, even if that's not true that the Ymir is Masters ranked, if it is true that the Ymir plays ranked, then this is just going back to what I've said last year sometime, I don't remember when specifically I said it, where my only real complaint with ranked players was that they're inflexible, and I think that's what this is. Again, if it is true that the Ymir plays a lot of ranked. If the Ymir normally plays ranked, then there are specific strategies, very narrowly defined strategies in ranked, and you just basically build what works for you 90% of the time, and that's going to be just fine for ranked, because people are much more predictable in ranked. But in casuals, which we are here, there is far less predictability. It's not very often that you see Hades in the solo lane in ranked, for instance. I'm sure it does happen on occasion, but it's not exactly what would be called a recommended strategy, right? At least for ranked. So this is simply the Ymir failing to recognize the possibility that I was going to be rolling into solo lane as a Hades. Now, it still doesn't really justify sticking with this build, because it just as easily could have been Baron Samedi, another great mage to play in the solo lane. He performs very well in solo lane most of the time, so Baron Samedi could have been his laning opponent, and he would have had much the same trouble. Baron Samedi plays very well against Ymir. Actually, probably that's a better matchup against Ymir than Hades is. Okay? Because the Ymir actually does do a decent response to my ults in time. But I just wanted to kind of lay out that because he's built the mask, I pretty much know for sure at this point that I've won the lane. Okay, he's got no real recourse against me, because he's going to be taking extra damage from everything I do. And as we've just discussed in the previous episode, and as we'll be discussing throughout this one, Hades can hit really hard if you're not careful, and unfortunately for Ymir, he's melee, and he needs proximity to the wave in order to clear it effectively. So that's probably the biggest disadvantage normally of a Ymir-Hades matchup, is the requirement of Hades to basically put himself at risk for a Hades counterattack, right? So at this particular point, what I'm really looking to do is try to get to level 5 as quickly as possible, because now that I know he's got the mask, I know for a fact that if I can get my ult and I ult him, he's doomed. I just basically win the lane right there. Okay, so I'm just rushing as quickly as possible. I was doing some poke on him earlier just because I could weaken him up, soften him up a little bit, make him back off slightly. Right, but for the most part, I am just trying my darndest to rush to level 5. That's what I'm doing. I come over here, I grab some experience, and I know right here, this is the wave, right? So I'm actually going to start initiating on him first, because boom, boom, and here's Osiris for the gank, right? I get the kill, great, I'm level 5. I wasn't actually initially expecting Osiris to gank here, right? Osiris initially busts out a gank, right? I come over here, I'm coming back in, Osiris calls gank, right? And I'm like, okay. I was just going to clear the wave and get my ult and then kill Ymir that way. It was my plan. Now, at this point, I really should be going back, to be really honest, because Ymir just hit level 5. Alright? I should be going back. I get greedy here, which you see quite often in solo lane. I'm just as vulnerable to this as every other solo lane player on the face of the earth. But I want more. I want to solidify my lead. Some going ham here, right? I'm looking to clear this wave. Now, I make a mistake right here. This is my fatal mistake. All right? You're going to see why in a minute. I should not have done this. I should have used my silence to afflict the wave with blight, and I should have just devoured their souls. By the way, notice I accidentally I misclicked I put a point into my silence. Mild issue, but it's really not a big deal in this particular situation. But what I should have done is silenced the minion wave for the blight and then devoured souls. I use my escape here for this, right? And he freezes me, and then he busts out the damage, and then I know I'm dead here, right? That's his full ult. If I hadn't initiated with Death from Below, I would have been fine, right? Now, this is a mild setback. I'm still going to wind up winning the lane because of Ymir's item choice, purely his itemization. Again, if he'd built something along the lines of Gilded Arrow, or even, hell, Warrior's Axe, he would have been far better off. He probably still would have had a good chance of winning here. He's not got his ult. I have my ult, so I already know that the next time I really want to kill him, he's doomed, right? He just wanders back in here. I've got minions, so I bust out my ult, because, of course, my cooldowns are going to be, you know, gone. Boom. And then I'm just looking to silence him out, and I'm just trying to get that kill. I don't quite get it. That's fine. He now is low enough on health where he either has to camp under tower, which is bad for his gold gain rates, or he has to go back and lose a wave because he doesn't have his teleport up anymore, because I saw him use that, right? It turns out that he goes for his mana buff, and Osiris winds up killing him here, which is, you know, nice. But, yeah, he really didn't have a whole lot of recourse there after my ult and after all that damage I did to him. And at this particular point, he's just really in deep trouble. Now I save Osiris here. We commit a little hard to this, and I can do so because I know Ymir's not going to be back for a hot minute. But then a whole bunch of the enemy comes in, so I gotta go. So I'm trying to get away the best I can, and I am just desperately trying to evac. I don't think I'm going to make it, to be honest, at this particular point, but I'm just dodging, I'm juking, doing my best, silence them out, and then I get to pop out like this, heal off of the Mercury, I'm healing with my potions, and they get stuck on the minions, which is beautiful for me, and I get to survive. Alright, now the Ymir is back, but I have since gained a level, so I'm not too afraid of him. Again, my potions are running here. I dodged the grab because that absolutely would have been really bad news for me. Ymir attacks me, I back off. Now I back off very specifically because I understand that Ymir has his ult. The wave is right here. I can heal off of this. This isn't really a big deal for me, but I very specifically backed off there even though I had my ult, is because I knew if I ulted right then and there, I would have just died, right? So I wait a second, I heal off the whole wave, upwash, slaps Ymir for a little bit of damage, and keep in mind that the upwash is a support. He's not building damage, and he still did a very respectable amount of damage to Ymir. Again, that is primarily due to that mask, okay? So, roll on in here. I'm going to grab my mana buff here. Just, you know, go on ahead, blast the ghosts with blight explosions. Lovely time. And then I'm going to go back to wave. Now, I'm a level higher than the Ymir, and I have my ult. He has his ult, but I'm not too concerned. He's already damaged at this point. He backs off, which is the correct move. Again, he doesn't want to fight me in wave. He knows that. I know that. Right? There's just no way he wins that fight. At all. So now, going for more experience, I'm just trying to rack up as much experience as I can, because I know for a fact that as long as I'm very careful to not get killed by Ymir's ult, I win lane. That's really my only concern at this point. So I'm just going full hog. I actually full clear the wave there because I want to grab this, and I'm not sure where Ymir is. I don't know where the jungler is. Right? I don't know where anyone is at that particular point in time. Now, I see Maui there, I see Anubis there, but that doesn't tell me where Mercury is. And Mercury moves fast, so there's always the possibility. Now, at this particular point, I could press the Ymir, but he's already backing up, and I want my Spirit of the Magus. I want to do that increased damage. I want to start working on my first stage of Oni Hunter's Garb, right? Lovely time. Now we're back. Ymir went back as well. And I'm just rolling up. Now, he hesitated there. You can see him very directly hesitate because he knows I'm setting up a trap here. He knows I'm setting up a trap. I very specifically auto-attack the 3 minions, and he knows that I'm lining this up for a Blight Explosion. He goes for it anyways, which is kind of interesting. And he freezes me out of it before I can get that fully off. That's fine. I just don't get the poke on him, basically, right? I healed most of that back up. It's really not a big deal. I'm going to go and steal his Scorpion at this point. I don't need to kill Ymir at this particular point because I'm just about to get another level ahead of him. In actual fact, I'm probably a level and a half ahead of him at this point, right? I get some poke on him there, so I commit to the ult. He uses his ult. I almost get out in time. It's not really a big deal, but that is actually the one reason why, despite the fact that Ymir can't, I think that's the best demonstration of why the Ymir Hades matchup isn't that bad if he'd built better, right? Ymir's ult is interesting where it's going to end right after Hades' ult does. So while, yes, the Ymir is taking all that damage, he isn't being pulled in, and he gets to retaliate with a huge burst of damage immediately after Hades is done ulting. So for that specific reason, as long as Ymir isn't in danger of dying in the middle of Hades' ult, for Ymir to counter a Hades ult with his own ult actually just makes it basically a glorified damage swap, really. Again, the only real difference here is that I'm doing more than normal damage due to that mask. If he didn't have that mask, my ult would not have been hitting him as hard as it does. So, in, again, a more reasonable scenario where he'd built, again, my favorite example is Gilded Arrow, he would not have been taking as much damage, and he actually would be winning these trades, okay? He would be doing more damage to me at this point, at least until I build my magic protections, right? So, for those of you who think that just across the board Ymir versus Hades is a terrible matchup, it normally isn't this bad. Alright, again, this is exclusively a problem of him building the mask and taking extra damage from me and my blade explosions and my ult, right? That is what this issue is. So with that being said, I'm coming over here. I'm hoping to steal his blue buff, right? Unfortunately, as you can see, it isn't up. But I go over here and I steal his trophy anyways, because the wave hasn't met yet. And even if it does meet, I'm still going to clear relatively quickly. And once again, as Hades, I don't mind minions being there. That's just extra healing for me, right? I blast that. I get all that, you know, I get some extra poke on him. Clear the wave with my auto attacks, because I don't want to, you know, obviously my skills are on cooldown, but that's fine, because I don't have my mana buff right now. Clear that so I could go for this really quick, because I was actually concerned. It occurred to me that he might be going after this. He was not, right? Because he just disappeared, and I was like, oh, what if he's going for the totem? Now, at this particular point, I'm just going to quickly clear the wave, right? I'm trying to get them lined up there, which is why I was backing up. Clear the wave really quick, and now I'm looking to do some poke to him, right? I decide not to. Now, the reason why I decide not to is because the wave, basically he was about done with his wave. And at this particular point, I understand that he has the mask, right? And my abilities aren't quite what I would want them to be. So I want to grab this totem really quick. Another reason why I didn't go in on him is I don't have my mana buff, okay? Because you can see where I was going to actually go on to him originally, and then I decide not to, right? There's this one minion here, I'm going to clear this, and then I hesitate. You can actually see where I kind of go left and right, because I'm originally aiming at him for to line up an auto attack, and I decide against it because I realize, you know, I don't have my mana buff. This might be, you know, even if I win, I'm going to be out of mana very likely and not be able to escape from Mercury, because once again, I don't see Mercury. I am checking right beforehand where Mercury is. I don't see him. So even if I committed to Ymir right now, I probably would win, sure. Absolutely. But the problem is that would cost me a lot of mana to do, and I don't have that spare mana. I don't have my mana buff. I don't have the totem. I've got nothing going for me if this either goes south, if I miss an ability, or Mercury shows up. I'm screwed, right? So I decide against this right about here, and I'm just going to finish the totem, get some of that mana back, go for my mana buff, do it the safe way. I've been killed once by my own hubris at this point. I'm not going to take any unnecessary chances, and that was going to be an unnecessary chance that I just didn't need to take, right? Right now I'm ahead of him by 2 levels. Dying to him would give him far more than killing him would give me. So I don't want to take that risk unless I'm sure I'm going to carry it off. And now at this point also, by the way, because I was kind of curious about this earlier when I saw the stage 1 potential Warlock staff, and I was wondering if he was going for it. He is. Alright. So now I'm like, alright. Now, this I am assuming is Divine Ruin. This is generally the item you want to bust out if your landing opponent is Hades, because it's going to really help out against the large amounts of heal that Hades can potentially provide himself. This is a correct pickup. Now, the issue with the stacks And I mentioned that it would be more apparent what the issue with the stacks are. You probably already know, or you've probably guessed, the fact that he's 2 levels down, and again has to really go into an exposed position in terms of wave clear, really makes building stacks against Hades an iffy prospect, especially considering the bonus damage he's taking from his mask. Or let me rephrase that a little bit better. He's receiving more damage due to his mask. So to commit to stacks at this point is an exercise in either total optimism, total confidence in your own ability to what I would say a high-risk level, or just an unwillingness to change your build according to changing circumstances, which is exactly how you lose Smite games, right? If you learn nothing else from my Smite videos, please learn just the one thing. Be adaptable. There's a reason you can build items on the fly. In fact, the only item you can't change and replace with something of equivalent value are starter items. Once you buy a starter item and you walk out of that fountain, that's it. Everything else is changeable. Well, other than your relics. There's a reason for that. Adapt if you need to. You can, and you absolutely should. Alright? Ymir is not adapting, and this is why he winds up doing very poorly. And again, I do attribute this to him playing ranked. There's nothing wrong with ranked players generally speaking. In fact, a lot of them are very good. Again, under the right circumstances. If a long-time ranked player gets into a situation they're used to from ranked, they perform extremely well. You throw something at them out of left field, like Hades in solo lane, they have a hard time adapting, which is one of the great benefits of playing something totally unexpected. The Opwash support is a fantastic example of this. How do you play against something that logically shouldn't really work? Again, I've mentioned it before, the element of surprise can be very powerful. Now, especially considering that Opwash here has splashed in a damage item for the cooldown purposes, right? Very classic Sentinel's gift, surprise Chronos pendant, and then right back to the protections. Alright? That's very unexpected. Even I wasn't expecting that, and I've been playing this game for 7 damn years. Even I didn't see this coming. And to be honest, I'm paying more attention to the enemy's builds. I'm looking at this now. I did not know up until recording this that Opwash's second item was Chronos pendant. Right, let me rephrase that. I found out at the end of the match that it was his second item, but it's here that it really clicks for me. Right, because for all I knew, Opwash could have sold something and gone for Chronos Pendant, right, at the end of the game. Looking at this here and now, he had to have built that second, which even I wouldn't have expected. Right? And then Opwash gets into surprise tankiness much later on, and you see my surprise later on. That's going to be a fun moment. But yeah, the element of surprise can do a lot for you, especially against ranked players who are unused to surprises. Alright, if you are a ranked player listening to this, form the habit of regularly playing casual conquest games as well, just to keep you on your toes, just to keep your skills really sharp. You play ranked for long enough, and I know this because I played ranked for 2 of my 7 years almost straight, right? You play ranked for long enough, you get into a pattern, you become really predictable. You become too used to seeing certain people in certain lanes. And when you go to casual conquest like the Ymir is doing here, surprise, surprise, you come up against something you haven't fathomed before. And now you have no idea what to do, right? And that's the beauty of casual conquest. You have no idea what kind of silly little mood people are in, right? And that's also part of the reason why Hades is such a scary opponent in solo. He's really good in lane, but he's unusual enough in lane that not everyone knows how to deal with him. Actually, hence the point of this video, right? So, back to the main point here. I am now aware that Ymir is doubling down on his error and building stacks. Okay, I can work with this. Let's roll, right? So now, we've got this wave here. I'm looking to full clear this real quick because I don't know where he is. There he is. All right. I relax a little bit, right? I'm clearing these with auto attacks. I'm looking to press him a little bit. I want to get some poke on, right? Because even though I don't know where... Now, keep in mind, I'm being really aggressive right now for a couple of reasons, even though I don't know where Mercury is. The reason why is because I am at full health, I have really good amounts of mana, I just got my mana buff, and Osiris is in left jungle. So even if I got into trouble, Osiris is in a decent position to reinforce me in a relatively timely manner, okay? So right now, I've got a lot going for me at this particular point in time. So I can be a little aggressive here with not much problem. In fact, you can see Mercury right there. So I see Mercury right there. I know he's clearing that mid-harpy. So I know I have some time to press Ymir. I go on ahead and ult him. I'm doing this for poke. He, again, does the correct move of ulting here. I really full commit on this because, again, I know for a fact Mercury is in mid, and then I kill him and back off, right? And I only really hard committed to that because, again, I did know specifically, you can actually see right here, right? Watch the Mercury because that's what I'm doing, right? The instant I activate this ult, I'm not looking at Ymir at all. I'm looking at this mid lane. Here's Mercury. He just ulted in. All right, I'm clear to go full in on this, right? Kill the Ymir. And I only killed the Ymir there because he's got that mask. So he's taking bonus damage from me. I think the bonus damage at this point, it's, I believe it starts out at 6%, and then it's 1/4% every level, so I think he's taking, I want to say maybe 8-ish, 8.5%, somewhere around there, extra damage, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about an ult and Devour Souls, it really starts to rack up, right? So the Osiris kills the Mercury, which is a great relief to me because that just means basically I get to stay in lane for as long as I want. Again, I have full health. I've actually wasted my health chalice a little bit here. I've got full health. I've got really good mana. I have my mana buff. I'm hoping to last long enough in lane that I can steal Ymir's mana buff. Now, I'm pretty sure he doesn't have his teleport up at this point, right? I'm going to go clear his Scorpion. You can see me checking right here, actually, because I actually angle my camera very specifically. Where I angle my camera, I didn't notice this originally when I was playing, but you can actually see Ymir return to lane right there. I see him now, but I was checking to see if his buff was right here. It's not. So I clear his Scorpion, and then I'm leaving, right? I'm going to go maybe get some poke. I'm 2 levels ahead. I don't care what he does. Also, interesting to note that he did not build the wall. Now, this is a correct choice by the Ymir, not building the wall. It does very little to Hades at all, right? There's very few things you can do against Hades with that wall. I can go under it with Death from Below. I can outright ignore it if I'm ulting. And it's really not going to do too much in locking me down because at this particular point, he's 2 levels down and doesn't want to lock me down, right? That's not how he's going to succeed here. Okay, so I'm just going to full clear here because I'm trying to line up for this, right? I'm just doing this once again for damage. I'm aware of the fact that I could see Mercury pretty soon, so I back off at this point a little bit because I'm not going to go full diving into his tower again with Mercury who knows where. Right, now he hits me pretty damn hard, so I'm going to be checking his items. He's got Divine Ruin, of course, he's finished that, so that's why. Alright, so I'm going to back off. Well, I intended to, but Mercury ults me. I should have actually probably, and you can actually hear right beforehand where I die, right? And then, boom. Now, the Mercury does this really well because he's standing right here at the edge of the jungle when he does this, so I can't see him in lane. Even if I had, minions over there, I wouldn't have been able to probably see him. So the Mercury plays that really well, right? So he kills me. That's fine because Ymir didn't get that experience. So I'm okay. Again, my teleport is also up, so that's fine. Right, again, I know that generally speaking I'm going to win the lane unless I do something really goofy, and that one was a fair Mercury gank. That was really good. So I'm okay with that, right? There's no real issue here. The Ymir does obviously catch up a little bit, but he's still substantially far behind. He's still 900 gold down. It'll wind up being 800 gold by the time I respawn. He's still a level down, right? He still doesn't have sustain, so he's still going to have to, go back to Fountain more often than I will. So I still have a fairly substantial lead on him at this particular point in time, right? Clear the wave really quick. I'm looking to go get my mana buff. I was going to go for the totem, but then I realized he'd already taken it. Off I go. I'm going ahead and get the blue buff here. And I'm watching the waves right now, because if Ymir doesn't show up there, then he's missing. He doesn't show up. He's not there, but there he is, right? I think I must not have been in vision range yet. He misses his freeze, which is just some poke. It's not really a big deal. He just missed some poke. I see Osiris fighting Mercury in the jungle, and so what I want to do... Now, you actually see me make a plan of action here, alright? Now, I clear the wave, right? And then I'm going to go on the totem. Now, I'm watching this go on over here, right? Now, Mercury's moving this way, so I decide I'm going to distract Ymir, because the only way Osiris loses that right now, because Osiris is level ahead, is if Ymir joins. There he goes, right? Now, I should have, because what I make a mistake, actually, right? I'm going for the totem. I see the Osiris chasing the Mercury. I'm going to go for the Ymir. I decide against it, even though I know. Now, my thought process here, which is incorrect, by the way, is, alright, Osiris is ahead. He should be able to kill the Mercury. And I don't think Ymir is going to make it in time. Then, if you pay attention to the minimap, Maui shows up. Now, I don't notice this immediately until this particular point, and then I'm like, alright. So I want to grab this really quick, because I've already gotten this far on it, right? Boom, alright. And then, at this point, where I'm doing this, I see Osiris ult away, I see Maui chase. I'm committing to this because I want to clear this. I'm moving this way because I want to go over and help Osiris if he needs help. He does not, because he's over here now, and I don't see Maui following him. So I'm like, alright, Osiris doesn't need help. Now, the reason Osiris left is because I didn't show up. I could have shown up, and I show up at this point because I chased him this far, right? So I want to make sure that even if he dies, we get something out of this, right? And I'm trying desperately to save him. I heal him very specifically with my Devour Souls. I waste my ult because I didn't know Maui had his jump up. I chase because Ymir isn't here. In fact, Ymir is right there. And this is our first real team fight. Now, I'm going ham on this because, again, right now we have the advantage in terms of level. I'm trying very hard to kill the Maui. I get the Maui with auto attacks. It's a lovely time. The upwash kills the Ymir. I'm going back to go clear these waves. I'm pretty sure I can take the tower at this point, right? Even if Mercury shows up, I'm 3 levels ahead. I don't care. I've got my health chalice running. I just healed off of Devour Souls. I kind of assume that my minions will take care of that tower. I'm looking to steal this, right? Let's cripple Ymir while we're at it, because there is no room for mercy in Smite. Fun fact. So, okay, my minions didn't clear the tower, but I can... clear them out, right? Make sure that happens the next time around. Ta-da. Gonna make sure it happens this time around, as I said before. Going to actually auto-attack it myself. Boom, there's the tower. Alright, now I'm going to go back. Because I just got the tower, I have a lot of gold to spend, and I want to get my Bancroft's Talon. And I want to get my Bancroft's Talon because at this point, and you can see me trying to teleport to beehives, which is embarrassing for me because I should have known that that's what those were. But I was originally going to teleport to some beehives, and then I can't, so I just teleport back to my tower. And there's Ymir. Okay. So he's, looking to push down my tower in revenge. Now, this is something that I don't talk about a lot, but this is tunnel vision, right? Ymir, you can see Ymir being in lane, right? You can see Ymir right here. Now, Ymir shouldn't really probably be here by himself. He really should, at this point, be grouping up with his team. They are behind, and he's lost his tower. In theory, he can roam around and help other people, and he really should be. He sticks in the lane because of what I call laning tunnel vision. This is also what happens a lot with hunters as well, where one hunter loses their tier 1 tower, and they just focus in on trying to take the tier 1 of the enemy team until eventually that falls, and they will refuse to team fight until then. And we all know players like this. Well, I won't say we all know them. We've all seen players like this, right? That just need to get that tower back. Now, it's different here with the Keranos. You can see the Keranos right here. This isn't tunnel vision because that minion wave was going to be lost. Right, that minion wave was about to go under tower and get killed by the tower. So it's very important for Keranos to run over there and stop that and get the experience and gold for himself. But for the Ymir, my wave was like right around here. His tower wasn't in danger. Keranos' tower was. Now, this is actually an interesting move, actually really quick, by the Mercury, right? The Mercury wanders on in here, and I see this. This is actually why I changed direction. Why he's here, I don't know. He's down a little bit team-wise, right? He's one level ahead, sure, of Osiris, but, you know, the rest of his team is not doing well, and so that was a fairly risky move to do, right? He does escape with his ult, but now he can't ult in and attack anyone else, right? That's just not going to happen anymore. So Osiris chases it for some equally unholy reason, and I'm going to go in and try to save him. Right? There's Posh, there's Baron Samedi. Maybe we can make something out of this. We are ahead as a team, right? So I'm looking to go in here and I'm looking to get something, right? I get the Emir, and again, I kill him because he's building 100% damage and has less, you know, he's got negative protections, really, with that mask. So I kill him really quick. I'm not looking for that fight because now they're under tower, and I don't think we're far enough ahead for that. So I'm just going to steal their jungle here. Right, Posh keeps the Mercury off. Now I don't want to commit to that because, again, most of the enemies are right there. I'm just trying to steal their farm in the jungle. I'm trying to get the Osiris to catch up a little bit more. He's level 15. Mercury's level 15. It'd be even better if Osiris was 16. So let's steal Mercury's farm, right? Alright, we're going to clear ourselves a minion wave in the middle here. Boom. Lovely. Okay. At this particular point, it's just all about that farming. I'm trying to get to level 20 so I can grab my Gem of Focus, which would be really nice. That would help keep me alive. That would help me do some good damage, right? So here we are, clearing the blue buff. That's a lovely time. All right, there it is. There's Mercury in left lane. Okay, let me see if I can press this a little bit. Maybe we can get some poke. You know, the Mercury is, you know, ahead of the Osiris again in terms of level, right? He runs off. Now, I don't chase him because I already know I'm not going to catch up to him. Hades is not going to catch up to Mercury under normal circumstances, and this is normal circumstances, right? Mercury rotates to mid, alright. What I'm going to do is, and originally I was going to just teleport directly to the mid tower, but I decided I'm going to go back to Fountain and start building my protections and evolve to the Bancroft's Claw first so I can do more damage, I can survive longer, upgrade my Horrific Curse, right? You can see Mercury ulting in, so I'm going to be looking to keep these people off. I go for the Anubis specifically because he theoretically does damage, right? He does unfortunately kill Baron Samedi, but I take him out right afterwards. Keranos wastes his ult on me, which is kind of funny, and I've now gotten the Ferocious Executioner proc, so I know that he's not going to have that up again. Clear the wave, I'm going to follow them in. I'm assuming they're going for damage or Amazon Cobb. They're not here at damage, they're going for Amazon Cobb, so I warn him at this point. You can actually see where I'm very specifically checking, right? As you see them wander over here, and I know Amazon Cobb is right there, right? So I'm checking. First thing I'm looking at is this damage camp. Damage camp isn't there. Warn the Amazon Cobb. I'm going to go in and help him out because I'm level 19, and I've got teleport, and I've already lost my tier 1 because Ymir Tunnel Vision. So here I am to try to help out clear the Mercury. Now, I tried using Horrific Curse to keep him there, but it didn't work out. That's fine. At this point, hoping that we can take this tower instead, right? Kill Ymir again. Again, 100% due to that mask. If he'd been building literally anything else, he would have survived that. You know, go hard on the Keranos, completely with everything. Now, at this point, I think I'm being chased, and I'm not, so I'm going to deal with the minion wave, and then I get absolutely pub-stomped by Mercury and Anubis. That's fine. That's fair enough. My minion wave is starting to stack up. You can actually see this over here, right? It's starting to stack up quite nicely. And now at this point, I'm just seeing what my allies are going to do to pick up basically what I left behind, along with what the enemy started with Amazon Cobb. They kill Amazon Cobb. Upwash is in trouble. Now, the Osiris makes the correct choice here. You might wonder why the Osiris didn't go in to help. At that point, he would have arrived too late. Upwash still would have died, and Osiris probably would have gone right afterwards if he had gone in on that. So, Osiris does make the correct choice here. I want to be very clear. This was not abandoning Upwash. This was, Upwash is already dead. Why should I go in and die too, right? That's what that was. So, just a, you know, shout out for great decision making by the Osiris there. That's fantastic. You know, he activated the catapult. That's fine. I'm going to be looking to push that down in a perfect world, but I'm trying to see what the enemy team is doing first. So they take the mid tower. Right, that's fine. I'm going to go on ahead to left lane. Right, I want to actually finish my Breastplate of Valor first, but I'm going to head to left lane right afterwards. I see Ymir there, so okay, the urgency is increased a little bit there. Now, I'm teleporting here because I'm hoping to get this gank. Now, Ymir is in left lane, right? But he's dealing with the catapult. So, okay, let's see if we can make something happen in mid. Now, I don't know what the Maui and Osiris were doing here. I have no idea. But I leave that alone. But here's Anubis. Let's go on him. Alright, boom. Slap him. Alright, he's doomed because now I've got him in my ult. He's dead. Mercury ulted by. Here's Maui. Okay. There's Mercury there. Let's go after Mercury. Now, Mercury is probably going to try to escape to the left. I'm sorry, to the right. He does not. He goes left. Boom. Alright, let's save Baron Samedi. Slap him. Slow him down. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to catch up to that, but, you know, I'll just go on to the next target, which would be Kernanos at this point. But then he comes back, which is a very silly mistake. I barely clip him with Devour Souls here, finish him off, and now it's 3 versus 3 here, but the Ymir is almost dead. Again, the mask. So I'm going to pop on in, and I'm going to try to kill him off, right? Now, he does some great things. Now, that was a good wall. It wasn't the best wall that could have happened in that situation. He could have completely cut that off, and that would have been a little bit better, but it was good enough, right? Now, I whiffed this, and I needed to hit it, and at this point, I'm not going to catch up to him. I just drop it and move on, because I'm not going to catch up to him through that tower, right? So I'm going to head to the mid lane, because I don't know what's going on over there. Grab some Harpies in the meantime. Clear some zombies, because they're just stalking me at this point. Get rid of them, so that way I don't have to worry about being seen on the minimap constantly by the enemy team. Clear out the rest of this jungle. It's a really lovely time for me. I've just hit level 20, so I'm looking to save up enough gold for Gem of Focus at this point, which is great, right? And then at this particular point in time, I'm just looking for something to get experience and gold off of, primarily gold. So, okay, go back to the minion wave, right? So I clear the waves, and then Osiris is going to come over here and drop my blue. That's fine. At this particular point, what we as a team are going to be looking for is some kind of big objective. Right, we're going to want to try to force a team fight in our favor, and we're going to try to take something. Whether this be the Gold Fury, the Fire Giant, or a tower, what have you. Now, at this particular point, Opwash pings AMC that enemies are incoming, and in fact, he gets jumped by Mercury, Kernanos, and who is that? Anubis. So we're all going to rush over there. Now, unfortunately, Amazon dies beforehand, because he didn't retreat. But at this particular point, we know Maui was in mid, so we have some people here who are, you know, alone. We take out the Anubis, now we're even. Here comes the Ymir, and now it's a 3v4 right now. The Baron Samedi is about to come in. Pretty soon it'll be a 4v4, but we need to kill someone quick. So we just single off Kernanos here, who can't get away. We slap him down. And you might be wondering, despite the fact that we lost AMC so early on in the fight, why we would continue to pursue it. Well, there are a couple of very specific reasons. First off, at that time, 3 people had ganked. Let me actually go back really quick. Let's go back 10 more seconds. Right here, we have 3 people on Amazon Cobb, and they're going to kill him. Now, we have 3 people coming in to reinforce, right? We have myself and Osiris right here, and we have Alposh right here. The Maui is in mid, should be following us. He takes a little bit to actually get around to following us. No one knows where Ymir is. There is some slight risk, because if Ymir is actually on his way, then we might have a problem. Now, the reason why the Amazon Cobb is here in the first place is the exact same issue Ymir was having earlier, and I suspect Ymir is in left lane, by the way, at this point, because Ymir probably still has this issue in this match, which is the tunnel vision I was talking about earlier. In this particular case, the tunnel vision from Amazon Cobb is not to even the towers here, it's because he wants to be the first to take a Phoenix, or something along those lines, right? Essentially the famous persistent split-pushing hunter, which happens quite often. It occasionally happens to solo laners as well, but it happens surprisingly often with hunters, and, well, let me rephrase that, ADCs specifically, because there are some people who play non-hunter ADCs, but anyways, back to the point, I think the reason why it happens particularly to ADCs is because experienced ADCs do understand that one of their jobs is to take out the structures, the towers, and the phoenixes. It's one of their jobs. It is part of what they're there to do, right? So a lot of them kind of get lost in the sauce, and they choose to sort of obsess over their own lane, right? Which is why you so often see a lot of ADCs pushing down their own lane by themselves, despite the fact that at this particular point in the game, it's team fight stage, right? I think that's a lot of the reason why. But right now, we are taking a bit of a risk by going in for this because it is possible that Ymir is on his way, right? And if he is, then we're going to be at a numerical disadvantage. It's going to be winding up being a 4v5. And while we are ahead in terms of golden experience, in fact, we are approximately 5,000 gold ahead, give or take. When they kill Amazon Cobb, it's much closer to that 5,000. Right now we're 5,500. That drops down to a 5,000 gold lead, and we have a bit of an experience lead. I'm 2 levels ahead of Ymir. Very specifically, Osiris is 1 level down. Baron Samedi, our mid, is 1 level down. AMC was originally 3 levels up from Kernanos, and Apwash is 3 levels ahead of Maui, right? So we are taking a bit of a risk here, but when we all converge, I went way too far with that. When we all actually converge, we converge very specifically, I don't even know why I went forward in the first place, on the immobile Anubis. Now, Osiris goes after Anubis, whereas Apwash was sort of fending off Kernanos. We take out the Anubis, and then the enemy goes full retreat. Now, why does the enemy go full retreat here? Despite the fact that Maui's coming in and so is Ymir. In fact, their best actual option is to attack. So what happened? My best guess is simply panic. I'm going to be really honest. Look at the situation here. It's about to be a 4v4. Their Guardian is 3 levels down. Their solo lane is 2 levels down. Our mid has, well, their mid has just died, so our mid being 1 level down is not really technically relevant. Right? And our jungler is only 1 level down, but still, they do have 1 level on us jungler-wise. So, I'm guessing that they look at the overall numbers here, along with, of course, the substantial gold lead we have, and they probably panic and flee. They're at this particular point in time, considering that Apwash is 1/4 of the way dead and Osiris is about 1/3 of the way dead, their best bet probably would have been to sort of full commit here. In my opinion, depending on how the Kernanos built. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but if the Kernanos had built enough penetration, then this wouldn't really be a problem, right? He goes full Bale, the Mercury goes full Bale, and we're able to pick off the Kernanos with very little trouble because he's basically alone. The Mercury totally leaves him, and the actual tanks of their team are not fast enough to catch up. Now, the Maui, I'm pretty sure, isn't really trying that hard at this point. I'm pretty sure he's trying to, not really play too hard, which is unfortunate. But I fend off both of them because he does actually make an attempt to do something to me, right? We pick off the Mercury. The Ymir, of course, was by himself, and then we pick off the Maui right afterwards, right? And now we're pressing down for this Phoenix. This is exactly what we are looking for as a team. Now, this is the moment I get really surprised. I actually checked the Apwash's build here really quick, but it's also really important to note a whole bunch of the enemy's builds as well, because this is actually a large part of the reason why they might conceivably have left. Now, at this particular point, the first thing I do check is Apwash, obviously, because his tankiness surprises me, considering how well he's been doing in terms of damage. But look at the Ymir. Not a single protection item. This is 100% attack, and in fact, this late in the game, with as far behind as he is now building the Book of Thoth, for some unholy reason. I'll talk about this more at the end of the game, but they essentially are operating with a single tank, Maui, who's 3 levels down at this point. Well, he's 4 levels down now, but at the onset of that particular team fight, he was 3 levels down. Now, as a team that would be aware of this, in theory, that's a really bad situation. I'm coming in, I'm building hybrid, so I have some protections, right? I have a respectable 160-ish of each, right? And then we have, of course, Apwash coming in with also what could loosely be defined as a hybrid build. He does have that damage item in Chronos Pendant, but that's primarily for the cooldowns, obviously, but it's still not a protection item, right? So, and he's clearly building, I imagine he's probably building Gem of Isolation there, if I had to take a guess. But he's building a bit more of a hybrid build himself, but we still have more defense. We have better front line than they do. They have literally just Maui, who is severely underleveled. It is for this very specific reason that they panicked and ran upon the death of Anubis. Because without Anubis, yes, Cernunnos and Mercury absolutely are hitting hard. The Cernunnos hasn't been doing well, but he's got a decent enough build, right? The issue really comes down to the fact that they didn't have the front line that they needed. This is due to the Ymir building so hard into damage, right? Now keep in mind, yes, he's got the fully stacked Warlock staff, but also keep in mind that's only 225 maximum HP. You get more out of Gem of Isolation in terms of max health. Or E-Staff. I believe E-Staff is 250, it might be 200. Sometimes I have a hard time remembering with E-Staff. But anyways, that is why they ran. They knew they did not have the front line to be able to fend us off at this particular point. So we take the Phoenix, and now we're going to be looking for... I want to take the tower. Alright, is personally what I want. I'm trying to heal off of this, right? And then I'm going to dive right on in here. I'm going full in here. I see the Alposh coming around. I'm thinking, alright, we're going to take this. Alposh leaves. I'm like, alright. You know, he does kind of follow up after the fact, but I realize with enemies coming down lane, we're not going to take that by ourselves, right? We don't have that capacity. I don't know what Amazon-Cobb is doing. I have no idea what he was trying. I think he was trying to solo the Fire Giant, which is really wild, because when you come back and look really quick at... Hold on, I want to go back to where I was looking at the builds here. Amazon-Cobb does not have enough lifesteal for that. Okay? It is possible for a hunter to solo the Fire Giant. I have done it before. Others have done it as well. But that requires a really specific build, and that build is... okay, it can work really well sometimes, but he doesn't have that. He doesn't have the lifesteal. He doesn't have enough penetration. You would want domination. You would want... very specifically Death's Embrace. You would want Aussie, Bloodforge, or possibly... well, instead of Aussie, you could go Devourer's Gauntlet, or alternatively, you could go Aussie and Transcendence. You need more than what Amazon-Cobb has. So why on earth Amazon-Cobb... And let's just skip back to the 30 seconds. You can see him fighting over here. I didn't initially notice this, but he's clearly going for the Fire Giant here, right? There was no way he was going to be able to take that by himself with the build he has. His build isn't terrible. It's okay. But it is absolutely not Fire Giant soloing material. Okay? Now he wanders off to go and clear my blue buff. That's fine. He primarily is doing this, I imagine, for the gold, is the only reason I can think of. Because obviously we're all level 20 except Alposh, and he's close enough where it doesn't make a difference. So I imagine he's going for gold at this particular point in time. But right now we're trying to stack up for... some other big objective. Now I get jumped by Maui here, so I hit the road. I don't want to fight that. Ymir's there, Maui's there. Turns out Anubis was there as well. That's a scary thing for me. No thanks. We get ambushed right here at the Pyromancer. I get whacked, which, as it should be, I was out of position, so was Amazon-Cobb. I was just the victim in that particular instance. And then there's this really interesting... Now this is actually that was very clever by the Maui, and you can see that a little bit while I'm buying my last item here. But you can see where the Maui effectively cuts off the Amazon-Cobb. Now, he was going for the Alposh, but you wouldn't normally want to go for the Alposh. By this time, I assure you that Maui knows that Alposh is our tank. He is our support. Normally wouldn't pull this, but this does really effectively double as a cutoff of AMC, forcing AMC out of the fight for a little while. So it was actually a really good move by the Maui here. And the Alposh, of course, is pressing really hard on Mercury right there. And then, of course, at this particular point, the enemy is going in because I'm dead, of course, and I was very ahead of the Ymir, right? I'm 8-4 for Pete's sakes at this point, right? But again, they only have the one real front line. So once they kill Maui, there's just pure squish. Even here, you know, the Ymir does successfully wind up killing the Baron somebody, but he dies right afterwards. And then with the way that their team composition is, this Maui, once he dies, that's it for them. That is their support. Boom, gone. Now they have no front line. Osiris is pressing hard, and there's literally nothing to stop him, really. Anubis could stun him theoretically out of that, and he busts that out way too late, unfortunately, for his comrade Kernanos there, but that was it, right? So I'm going to teleport in because I want to try to capitalize off of something. Whatever this is. I accidentally called Cold Fury, I misclick. We go for the Fire Giant, which is what we should be doing here. 3 of them are dead. Right, Mercury does fiddle around a little bit here. He's looking to steal the Fire Giant, and with his crit build, there's a decent chance he can with a lucky strike, basically. So I don't blame him for trying this, right? I believe he actually winds up ulting in here. No, he doesn't. I was thinking of a different match. So they kill off Osiris. I'm willing to full commit because we have Fire Giant, and I've got my ult, so Anubis just dies. I don't even need to ult him, but I was expecting to have to ult him, right? So I'm just going to tank this, right? We're just going for this tower at this point. Maui's standing back because he knows really technically he's not likely to be able to do anything. We have Amazon Cobb here, so we have a really good shot at actually taking this because, of course, he's our hunter, so he's going to be... I'm sorry, he's our ADC, so he's going to take this. Maui whips his ult, alright. Mercury runs right into this. Now, Mercury's made a huge error, right? This was not Maui's fault, by the way, at all. I want you to pay very close attention to this timing. He uses this... This is... The Mercury is looking right at this, alright? I want you to really understand that the Maui was trying to pull someone into the tower by themselves and section them off and kill them. This is what Mercury was waiting for. This was probably communicated. This is a very sound plan. Maui just happens to miss. And then after the island lands... Now, the island has physically landed, which takes a second. And then the Mercury whiffs his ult. And then he runs away from his team. Now, he's just cut himself off extremely effectively, and he's wiped out his biggest escape, his ult. Right? He's in pretty deep doo at this point. Now, we're a 3v, soon to be 4 at this particular point. I don't know why Baron Samedi is over there at damage, but we now have Mercury dead to rights. Wipe him out, and now it's a 3v3. And again, we have the golden experience advantage, primarily the gold advantage at this point. But, well, there is the difference between Opwash and Maui, so we do have a level advantage. So I'm going to go for the Karanos because he's their last real damage. The Ymir has not been doing well. I absolutely slap a lot of the audacity out of the Karanos here, finish him off. Of course, Ymir with his mask, he took a lot of damage from Amazon Cobb. We just clean up the Maui here because, again, Amazon Cobb is going to be good against that tank. Go for the tower, which, again, we have Amazon Cobb for. Great. Absolutely fantastic. We go for the Phoenix. Now, the only thing standing in our way is Anubis. Again, Hades versus Anubis is a pretty nice matchup, so I'm down for this. He whiffs his stun. That's all I needed. That literally is all I needed, because if he stunned me, I would have been in trouble. He missed the stun. I own that, right? That's just how the Hades versus Anubis matchup works. Off we go, at least if ults aren't involved anyways. And he'd recently used his ult, so I knew that wasn't likely to be up. So we take that Phoenix. Now we have minions going under the Titan in 2 separate directions. You can see where the Titan's already been taking damage from the fire minions since the last team fight. So at this particular point, we're in a really strong position. They have to defend their Titan. They're having minions come at that from 2 angles. We have Fire Giant buff still for another 2 minutes, basically. Now, Mercury jumps me. Now, what I'm trying to do here is... Originally, I'm thinking of fighting him, right? I do want to originally fight him. I back out because it suddenly occurs to me, consider where I'm at here, right? So they've all respawned. I see Maui here, and I see somebody else here. I don't know who that is. I think it's Karanos, right? I don't know where Ymir is, and Mercury jumps me. It is Karanos. Mercury jumps me, and I don't see the Ymir here. I'm paying attention to the Mercury. I don't know the Ymir is up there. I don't know this is a 1v1. So I leave because I'm concerned I'm about to get jumped by more people. I'm not, but I wasn't paying enough attention to the minimap at that time, right? So I bail out of there because I originally was going to fight him, but got concerned. I got afraid. Didn't need to be, now that I'm watching it back, but here we are. Right, so I'm just clearing for gold, basically, because I want Soul Gem. And that's going to give me some nice bonus damage. They're having a jumping party in mid. Like I said, I think the Maui wasn't really too thrilled at this point with his team. And I understand that to some extent some of this tension was the result of Ymir talking behind the scenes. I don't know how much, but... Yeah, the Maui's clearly not all in on this. Now, I realize at this point I'm dead, right? I get killed by the Anubis here. The instant that Anubis walked out of here, I'm dead. There's just, I'm willing to commit to the. I really shouldn't have been, by the way, because I can see the Maui here. Now, I ult specifically because I'm trying to just basically outlast. I'm hoping Baron Samedi comes in and saves me because he can cut off the Maui. But the instant I see this Anubis, I know I'm dead. The Maui will likely be able to at least stall out Baron Samedi long enough for me to die. Okay? And in fact, that is exactly what happens. He, stuns the Baron Samedi. Now, Baron does take out the Mercury, which is nice, but he obviously can't save me. The Maui did stun him in time to prevent him from being able to do anything more, which I was probably dead at that point anyways, in all likelihood, to be honest. I don't think there was any way to save me. Not without Blink, and I don't think he has that. So they're just going to be trying to press this tower at this point. Now it's a 4v3, and again, we still have a huge gold advantage, so we're in a really good position here for this to happen. Osiris just goes right in. They have a catapult, so that's even better. Right? And they take the tower. Osiris is looking for something. Opbosh goes in. He's our support. He really should have been tanking the tower, to be honest, but, what have you. So they take out the Keranos, and then I finally buy my Soul Gem and go for the damage potion. They're going for the Phoenix. Amazon Cup takes out the Emir. They take the Phoenix, and I'm, on my way. I'm looking for a good ward, but there is no ward, and the enemy team just surrenders here because obviously we were about to win there. But essentially, at the end of the day, the real issue with this particular fight was, I have to admit that a large part of this was the huge gains that I got due to not necessarily just the Emir versus Hades matchup alone, but because of his really questionable build. Okay, again, he went full damage. He didn't even get to finish Book of Thoth stacks, which, it was his second to last item. That does not surprise anyone, right? And then he builds Spirit Robe right at the very end after he gets Wronged Mask, so he's still taking bonus damage, alright, because of how Wronged Mask works. The Emir could have put up a much better fight if he'd not built the mask. It mostly comes down to the mask. The stacks are a problem, right? He would have fallen behind due to the slow speed of the stacks. Look, at the end of the day, Ymir is a guardian. He does not have that good of a scaling. Okay, he doesn't need that much power to be effective. Slap Gilded Arrow on him, evolve it to Diamond Arrow later on in the game, maybe grab Bancroft's Talons, get the glyph that increases attack speed, and then just build a whole bunch of protection items, and you're in pretty good shape. Maybe you build Telkines. I'm rather fond, personally, of Demonic Grip on Ymir because it really does reduce enemies' protections and help his damage output, but that's just my personal preference. But the way the Ymir built here was pure damage, except for that Spirit Robe at the end, and by that point it was too late. Right, by building this way, he left himself extremely open to a lot of my damage, and since I had sustain and he didn't, he couldn't afford to take that damage. Alright, that is a really huge problem with facing Hades. That is one of the major problems when you're facing off against Hades. He also did not rush to build Divine Ruin. Alright, now if you're facing Hades in lane, there's a reason why I build a starter item, I evolve my teleport, and then I build a whole bunch of potions. There's a very specific reason. It is because I want to make sure I am counter-building for my laning opponent. It is not accidental that I have developed that build style in the solo lane. Alright? Ymir was already committed to the Warlock staff right from the get-go because he had the stage 1 item right away, because I checked pretty early and he had the stage 1 item, and he was fully prepared to go in for the glorious Warlock staff, right? So again, this comes down to him not being able to adapt, which again I do believe is related to extended amounts of time in ranked. I'm not really going to say any more on that, but just to keep that in mind. And the Mercury the Mercury did the correct thing here. Alright, there's something that is not really talked about a whole lot in the Smite space. Some people talk about it, but not enough people, in my opinion, talk about this. I don't talk about it often enough myself, but how junglers should react to the solo lane. Because a lot of, especially recently, I've seen a lot of people just, if there's a problem in the match, they just straight out blame the jungler. Mercury did a pretty good job here, considering what he was working with. He did alright. Okay? Now, Mercury did make the decision, and you can see that, I would say about a third of the way into the match, where he stopped coming over completely. Osiris also stopped coming over completely, but that's because I really didn't need the help at that point. After a certain period of time, it was really obvious that I had won the lane, and there was nothing anybody was going to be able to do about that. And part of this, again, has to do with Ymir's build. At some point, the Mercury made the correct decision of giving up on the lane. Okay? And that is one of the ugly truths about the jungle role, is sometimes you have to look at a lane and you have to accept that there's nothing you can do there and try to help the others get ahead. Now, clearly that didn't work out too well, and I think part of that has to do with the surprise of the Opwash support. Opwash brings a lot more damage to the role than a lot of people expect, especially early game where he was building towards Chronos Pendant early on. So I think that really threw, I think specifically Maui and Kernanos off. They did not perform particularly well in this match. I don't think that's a skill issue. I think that's actually more of the just sheer surprise of a support Opwash and figuring out in the early game when he's hitting his hardest, how do you deal with that? Especially since it's Opwash as a mage really stands out for his unusually low scaling. Opwash does not need a hell of a lot of damage to hit you hard. Okay? He does just fine with low damage, which is part of the reason probably why he's been picked as a support here. This is clearly a pick that, what I suspect happened, because this is clearly not Zroth's first rodeo as Opwash support. And it's not something that would occur to me either. I'll be upfront with you. But probably what happened was Zroth probably did this as a meme pick or a joke pick and found it was more effective than they were expecting. Now, they wound up building Rod of Asclepius rather than Gem of Isolation. If Zroth ever sees this video, try Gem of Isolation. I think you'll find it's disgusting on Opwash. But leaving that aside, back to the point, a lot of this match was just the enemy being unable to adapt to things that they weren't expecting. But, again, to talk through briefly what the Ymir could have done to put up a better fight, because part of the point of this video is to talk about how do you go against Hades. First off, obviously, like I said before, Gilded Arrow, get that damage in there. Second off, the Ymir's choice to ult in response to my ult was 100% the correct move. If you're facing Hades and Hades ults you, you have two options. One, get out of that ult as quickly as possible. Now, if you're someone like Ymir, you don't have that option, right? Ymir does not escape from that ult. Either you have beads, which you need teleport first, so you're not getting that until at least level 12, right? That's when you get your second relic. Or alternatively, you are capable of inflicting just as much damage to Hades during his ult that he's inflicting upon you. Now, this is admittedly difficult to do. Even at level 1, Hades' ult gives him 60 of both protections and 10% damage mitigation. So it's difficult to hurt Hades in his ult as hard as he's hitting you. Very true. There are ways, though. For example, if Ymir had gone into Gilded Arrow and then immediately started working towards Polynomicon, it would have been very possible where even if his ult was down, he could have alternated abilities with his Polynomicon blows and done a really respectable amount of damage to me, right? Very possible. But one of the really big things, and this is a really big problem with Ymir as a character against Hades specifically, and this isn't decided by build, and definitely the flaw of playing Ymir against Hades is that Ymir has to be really up close and personal to the wave in order to effectively clear it. Now, if you are playing a god that needs to be relatively close to the enemy wave to clear it efficiently. Say Erlong Shen, Osiris, someone who, more melee auto attack oriented. A lot of assassins have this issue as well. Most guardians have this issue because they don't exactly have wide sweeping abilities, right? A lot of them have to hang around near their minions, but Ymir could have mitigated this risk by going for the backline first, which he eventually did switch to. You can see throughout the match, if you go back and watch it, that yes, he eventually did start prioritizing the archer minions. Now, you always should be anyways. Archers hit harder than melee minions. But by going for the archers first against a Hades, you're essentially removing yourself from the potential sphere of influence of the detonating blights, right? As long as you don't get ganked by Hades' jungler, you're golden, right? You clear the back line, and then you go and clear the front line, okay? And then you go after Hades when it's just you versus Hades, because that's not what Hades wants. And you can see that where the Ymir really slapped me down after his first death, and he teleported back in, and he really smacked me down. I wasn't at full health, but I also didn't have the benefit of his minions to heal off of at the same time, right? So he picked a really great time to engage with that, and that's why I died there. You have to run the same thing against Hades. So it's really a... I mentioned something like this in the build guide for solo Hades, but when you're facing off against Hades in the solo lane, it really comes down exclusively to timing, right? Minions are gone, go after him. Go after him. If the minions are up, go after the backline. Go after the archer minions. And give Hades a wide berth. You don't want him poking you too much while waves are being cleared. Now, if Hades initiates on you while minions are up, just run. Don't fight him in minions. I don't care how good it looks, because he's going to heal up in the middle of that until you get your anti-healing, which should be your third item. Now, one thing the Ymir did absolutely get correct here was that Divine Ruin is the third item here. Alright, why is Divine Ruin very specifically the third item? Because roughly by the third item, Hades has finished leveling up Devour Souls, and it's level 5, which means he's healing the most then. Before then, it's still possible to poke out Hades to some extent because he's not healing as much, right? But once that hits level 5, and once he starts, once he's finished his second item, which usually is damage, then you're talking about trouble. And that's when you want to bust out the anti-healing. He's probably got some lifesteal at that point on top of his Devour Souls heal, and you just are really going to want that anti-healing there, right? So the third item is usually the latest. If you're really desperate, you can rush to the anti-healing as your second item. But generally speaking, it's going to make the most impact as the third item onwards. Alright, the second item, in my opinion, is a hair too early to be building this in most cases. There are some exceptions to this rule. Namely, say you are a mage. Well, not even a mage. I would say you are very specifically someone like Ymir, where you are, you have to be at a high-risk position to clear the wave, and you don't have any sustain. You might want to consider building Divine Ruin or some other anti-healing as your second item, because you don't have any built-in sustain, and you want to cut down on Hades. But even then, a lot of the times, it's better that your second item be some sustain, so that you can at least somewhat match Hades until Devour Souls hits level 5, and then you build your Divine Ruin to mitigate Hades' sustain, right? So build yours, sustain first, then diminish his. Is generally, even then, still the better way to do things, at least from my experience, both playing as and playing against Hades. Okay? And lastly, if you don't know what your landing opponent is, don't build the mask. There are situations in which it is extremely effective, but every time you build that and you don't know who your landing opponent is, that is a risk. That is a big risk. And this Ymir gameplay here, I'm not going to criticize Mighty Lettuce specifically here. I don't know how snobby they were to their own team. I'm not going to get into that. I have no idea. I just have their word for that. Whatever. But in this particular case, this was a classic example of ranked player playing ranked for a long time, switches to casuals, gets surprised by a unusual pick, and gets stomped because they don't know how to adapt. That's all this was. you might look upon the Ymir as not being good. I disagree. I haven't seen Ymir in a ranked game, which is their normal game mode in theory. In this particular instance, they just weren't able to adapt to the surprise of casuals. But at the end of the day, it's also really important at some point that you bust out some protections, alright? You can't do your job as a solo laner fully without at least some protection items. Even as Hades, I have 2 protection items, and I'm simulating a lot of protections through the use of passives. Oni Hunter's Garb, Gem of Focus. They're not real protections, but they're close enough that it makes me tankier than a lot of people would expect, and you have to kind of play the same game with every solo laner, right? So, with that being said, I'm going to leave this at that, because besides the abnormality of the Ymir's build, the rest of their builds were fine. They had perfectly normal builds. And I don't have anything. I think Anubis built Typhon's Fang slightly too early. I think I think Spear of the Magus should have been 4th, and Typhon's should have been 5th, personally. But beyond that, I'm not really seeing anything that stands out as being particularly problematic for their team or their team comp. They have a perfectly normal team composition. The Keranos even built correctly considering how overall tanky we are. Even as a solo laner, I'm fairly tanky. We have Osiris, who's got damage mitigation built into his kit. We'll be talking about in the next episode when I talk about building solo lane Osiris and how to fight him. Baron Samedi gets, increased mitigation when he's in his ult. So the Keranos' build, at first scratch, doesn't seem like a great build, but it was actually a decent build for what he was facing off against. I think he probably would have been better off with Transcendence personally, but again, that's personal opinion, personal preference. But yeah, their build, other than the Ymir's build, their builds were all fairly normal. And I really don't have anything more to say about those. But with that being said, thank you all very much for joining me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.